welcome in everybody. It is DNVR Rapids time, and we are live at the DNVR bar in Studio A. I am Mitchell Carroll, and joining me tonight is Rapids insider, Rapids reporter, Rapids very knowledgeable Rapids man. We got Joseph Samelson with us here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to join. I like the phrase blogger because it doesn't invoke a lot of pressure on myself.
That's fair.
I'm just a guy with I guess a lot of experience with the sport and a lot of experience writing. So a couple of years ago, I decided to just put all that together.
A Rapids fan with an internet connection. I like it.
Right there.
So we're going to break down last night's disaster of a game.
That's right.
We're going to get into the new kit debut in segment 2 with a special guest. And then we're going to look at LAFC this weekend in the MLS opener. And we're going to talk every bit of that. We're going to even get into a little bit of bets. We're going to look at all of it. So digging into last night, obviously the 1-0 win, the 1-1 aggregate, and the 4-3 loss in penalties. Very weird way to look at it like that, but just brutal. You had the disallowed winner from RUBIO in the 89th minute. That would have sent him through. It was negative whatever with the wind chill. And you were there. I was up top in the box, and you were down on field level.
That's right.
Just give me a feeling of how cold you were, because I know how awful I felt.
Listen, I was freezing, and so I've been to a lot of the historically cold Colorado Rapids matches over the years. I wouldn't say that this one was colder than the Toronto Champions League game back in 2018, but it was certainly colder than the Portland snow game at the start of 2019. And listen, by the end of the game, I could barely feel my toes. I could barely feel my fingers, and I was like layered up, three pairs of socks, 2 gloves, still like freezing to death basically.
I had the Sherpa line shoes. My toes were frozen.
Yeah.
And you could tell playing football looked miserable, and the Rapids played like a miserable team last night. They missed probably, I don't know, 1,000 chances.
Yeah.
They
12
buried
saves by Cremas goalkeeper Kevin Moscoso.
Yeah, and then
Not even counting the penalty shootout.
Yeah, and then beyond that, just a ton of corners that fell into a space where you probably should have finished and no one touched it.
Exactly.
Just a lot of bad first touches on balls up from Estevez and from Rosenberry that I thought gave a lot of chances. They had some decent breaks and just nothing finished.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you had the goal from Max shortly after the red card. And, FRASER said it best right in the press conference after the game. He said that, we didn't take our chances. And if you don't take your chances, you don't win games. The reality is that match shouldn't have gone to a penalty shootout in the first place. It should have been put away long before. Like it had
by the 30th minute.
Exactly. Yeah. No, even honestly, the way things were going before the red card, like the Rapids should have had an advantage. And just nobody on the front line, save for Max in the 29th minute, could really take advantage of their opportunities. And,
the snow isn't going to help. The cold isn't going to help, especially for a team that probably isn't.
I'd say it actually played into
fitness.
I would say it actually played into the opposition's cards.
Absolutely.
It slowed down the game, allowed Comunicaciones some time to sort of breathe a little bit. Even when the Rapids had the ball late in the second half, when the snow had piled up on the field, there were just moments where they just sort of took a break with the ball, trying to figure out what they were actually trying to do.
And Barrios said that, literally exactly what you just brought up. Barrios said that. He's like, we thought we were going in with an advantage, and it wasn't. We thought we were, okay, this is going to be our game, and the cold is much more of an equalizer than it is an advantage to either side, I think, ever.
Absolutely.
No one's ready to play an athletic game when it is below 0 with a wind chill. You're just not. You could be the best athlete in the world, and it's just not.
You could be the best athlete from Colorado who plays maybe 1 or 2 games a year in these conditions, and you still might not be ready for it. Because the reality is unless you're playing in these sorts of conditions on a weekly basis, it just floors you. Like when like coming out of the gate, like the wind chill, the snow, it's like you said, it's the great equalizer.
Yeah. And, it just, between all the missed chances, between the snow coming down, between just bad touches and bad balls, it was just a disaster all around, disaster of a result. We're going to get into stock up and stock down here. We're going to go through some players, some themes, and we're just going to sort of give you where your thoughts are at heading into the season, because obviously now there's no other competitions we got. It's just going to be MLS. So,
and U.S. Open Cup.
U.S. Open Cup, fair enough. But the schedule opened up a lot with this loss.
That's
so,
true.
And now they can just look ahead for this next couple weeks and really dig in, because there's some big opponents coming in. So,
yeah, absolutely, right off the gate with LAFC.
Big time. So stock up or down. First one we have here, super producer Yaya. We got Diego Rubio, who I think in the first game had a pretty decent game. Obviously didn't finish. Almost bagged a winner last night, and almost, I mean, that offsides, while it was clearly offsides, was close enough that it was
I honestly think it was close enough, given the snow, that you could make a reasonable argument that it was not clear and obvious that it was offside. And like, and to be fair, I don't actually know the explicit definition, I guess, that CONCACAF uses in terms of like when you can actually overturn something. I know in MLS the standard is clear and obvious, but I mean, the like we said earlier, the match should have been put away long before that. It shouldn't have come down to an 89th minute winner where that could have been disallowed.
So stock up or stock down? I think people are not going to like my answer for this.
I'm going to say stock down.
I am going stock up.
All right. Why don't you explain your thoughts first?
I'll say this, and I think this has more to do, less with results and more to do with what we've heard from FRASER so far, and a little bit what we've seen on the pitch. But I think we clearly are going to have a relatively very creative midfield.
That's right.
I think Max is a great element. I think Estevez has been great, and not that he's in the midfield, but he plays so far up that he might as well be an attacker.
Yeah, basically.
And he has been, the balls are going to be there. And I think he has a history. He has scored goals. He's been a DP9 in this league. He seems very committed. FRASER seems very committed to him being the 9, being heavily featured up top. And I'm not as down, knowing that there won't be a 9 coming in until July, if at all.
No, I 100% agree. I don't think there's any... I don't think you can reasonably expect at this point that the Rapids will make a striker signing before the end of the primary transfer window.
Yes.
Like, I think it's absolutely... If it comes at all, it's going to come in the secondary window. I don't think it had to be that way, but I think at this point that is the most likely outcome. The reason I went stock down with Rubio is I feel that if he's not going to be the forward that bags the goal every time, he's got to be the forward that creates chances.
Fair.
And I don't think he did a great job of that last night. I think he had a total of 2 key passes from around something like 30 or so touches.
Yeah.
I feel like he needs to be able to find and connect with other members of the attack and put them in positions where they can score. Now, obviously, it sucks that, his goal was disallowed. If he scores that, I'd probably say stock up, honestly.
Sure.
But when he's not scoring goals, you have to rely on him to play like that sort of false 9 role of him dropping back and connecting with the other attackers in FRASER's system. And he just didn't last night.
I think the biggest negative that was a highlight that you could like point at and be like, this is why I say we as in like Rapids Twitter, the following, the fans, everything, was when he was playing literally on the other side of the circle and went down with an injury, and the break is happening, and he's literally on the other side of the midfield line down.
Yeah.
Your striker is down on the other side of midfield, and he can't play back. Now, I know that Robin loves him because of his defense. Like, he drops back, he commits, but we need him up. We need him up top.
Absolutely.
And I think, God, it's really hard to say anything from last night is going to mean anything going forward. Sure. Besides the loss, meaning we're out of the tournament, right?
Yeah.
I think I think Max, I think Acosta, I think Estevez are showing enough that I think he'll finish more goals than people are expecting. And that's why my stock is up.
I do agree that if you probably look throughout the year, assuming that he starts 20, 25 plus games, Rubio's probably going to bag more goals than he did last season.
Yeah.
Which is going to be a positive. But I guess I wasn't particularly inspired by his performance last night. I think there was one moment, I want to say it was in the second half, it might have been in the first, where the ball came to him at the top of the 6. He sort of danced around it for a little bit. He had the opportunity to either lay it off for Barrios or take the shot himself, and he just went for the dive instead. There was contact, but I mean, it's CONCACAF. They're not going to call like that type of foul.
No penalties
in the box
coming
right
on
there,
that. Nope.
Right. And so I was really disappointed at that moment in particular, which is, I guess, might be coloring my stock down for Rubio.
Yeah.
But I do think that he is likely to have a more productive season this year than he did last year.
I think we're going to see something like a 4 goals in 3 games run. Some point, I'm not calling
Maybe
it
another
off the bat.
banger free kick.
Yeah.
Like against like he did against Vancouver last
Absolutely.
year. I'd love to see that again.
There's going to be a run before the transfer window, May, April, where we're like, okay, like Rubio is getting goals for us, and there's going to be enough supplement from Max. I think Shinyashiki and Barrios are both going to be big contributors there as well. That I think there's enough creativity. I say enough in terms of like, okay, we can field an offense that can score goals at the MLS level.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's going to be goals by committee again.
It will
be.
Season. But I think he'll contribute to that. Yeah, and that's why I'm up.
And that's fair. And I'm okay with the goals by committee approach in like the context of the regular season. I just think you look back to the playoff game last year, you look back to these 2 Champions League games, those strategies sort of fall apart in a knockout competition format because you just need the guy who's just so clinical. You can always count on him. And the Rapids just don't have that guy right now.
And I think the biggest thing was not re-signing Badgie and letting him go to Cincinnati. I would have loved to see him stay. I think he was the perfect target piece up top, especially adding Max and letting Lucas play up.
I'll hold off on my opinion on that until we learn exactly what Badgie is making with Cincinnati.
Sure, fair.
Because I think the impression I've gotten from the people I've talked to in and around the club is that Cincinnati just threw the bank at him.
Yeah.
Which, fair play. He had a great, half season with the Rapids last year.
Great.
He deserves to get paid.
Absolutely.
I'm not certain the Rapids should have equaled whatever he was being offered. But we'll see when the salary release comes out at the end of May. I'd love to see. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. So that was a comment that popped up earlier. Is Jonathan Lewis really the path over Badgie? And I think, we'll get into Lewis a little more too. I'm high on Lewis, but
I don't think Lewis is really the answer at number 9, to be honest. Like, I know Lewis is incredible off the bench, and we saw this when he first joined the club, and he had a run of performances where he would just come on in the 65th, 70th minute and just have like an amazing game. But from the start, especially like you look back to the Guatemala game, the game in Guatemala City, like I don't think he can't utilize his pace as effectively from the get-go.
Absolutely. Dev Machine here. Devin, who was on the show last week. This is Rubio. Just needs to be more decisive. And I agree.
100%.
Yeah. If he can just start pulling the trigger, because the balls will be there. He needs to pull the trigger. We'll see.
Feels like he thinks too hard about his
thinks way too hard.
Sometimes.
I think he understands that he's the 9.
Yeah.
And he probably understands that they need a 9 on the roster. Right? And I wonder psychologically how that plays.
That's true.
Where he's like, oh, okay, so now I can't play off of the 9. I have to be the 9.
That's true.
So we'll see. We're disagree on this one, and that's okay. We'll probably won't agree on all of these. Next up, we're going with Mark Anthony Kaye. Return of the Mac. The Mac attack.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I think we're gonna.
I'm going big ol' stock down on Mac. And I don't think that's like a permanent stock down. I do think he'll round into form, but he's been playing with Canada. He, in a press conference before the game in Guatemala, called himself one of the best midfielders in the league. And while I think the potential for that exists, he's not shown that at all.
Yeah, and just from last night, he got the ball and I remember this because I put it in my my little takeaways column after the game. And I hate to harp on individual stats all the time, but they really do paint a picture of how particular players play. When KAYE plays in midfield, the Rapids need him to be someone who creates opportunities. Mm-hmm. And though the Rapids created a host of opportunities last night, KAYE got the ball 70 times and only created one key pass, as in one pass that led to a shot.
Absolutely.
From the way you hear national MLS media talk about KAYE, from the way you hear the Rapids coaches talk about KAYE, the way you hear everybody talk about KAYE, you expect him to be a lot more than that.
How you hear KAYE himself talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think he's going to finish this season as a very, very good midfielder in this league. I don't think he's going to be all 11 for the league, but he needs to contribute more. He needs to be more active. I thought he was drifting way too far back. I don't think when he got on the ball, it wasn't going anywhere. He kind of dribbled into trouble. I would probably say 3 or 4 times last night, without off the top of my head remembering exactly what he was doing. But it was just frustrating to watch.
It's going to be really interesting to watch how he operates in the midfield without Kellyn Acosta this year.
Yeah,
because I feel like even when Kellyn Acosta played wingback, the two of them combined and worked really well together. Mm-hmm. And this year without him, I think Brian Jennings mentioned this, that KAYE really wants to step up and be a leader this year.
Yeah.
And sort of be that guy that Acosta, sort of that a vice captain, if you will.
Sure.
I don't know if the Rapids have an official vice captain on the team, but they want him to be the sort of that guy under Price that stands up for his fellow teammates. And we saw him get into it with Steven Ruiz after the red card offense on Trusty.
Absolutely, which I liked.
Oh yeah, no, and with that, I noticed this after watching the replay for the game when I got home. He got choked out.
Oh yeah.
By I forget their names, but number 34 and 25, I believe.
We were right above that in the press box, and I was actually that was the highest I've been on Mac, was when he came in there and was kind of setting the tone for the team, and I think he prides himself on that. I did ask him in that presser before the game in Guatemala about the newcomers, about Brian Acosta and about Max and how he sees himself playing off of them. He has a ton of respect for Brian Acosta. Yeah. I don't think anyone really knows what to expect with Max, because I think they've just seen the same YouTube highlights that we've seen.
Yeah, the 2-minute video or whatever.
But he seemed really excited to play with Brian. Now, obviously, Brian is not a like for like with Kellyn, but I do think that if you can get 4 midfielders on the field at one time, I think that will help him, because you'll have guys like Brian and Max who can work in concert with him and sort of just bring the creative floor up a lot.
Oh, yeah. No, I 100% agree. And I think this is still going to be a big season for KAYE, for Mac. It's hard to call him Mac anymore because of Max. I feel like
Mac
every time I say Mac, I feel like I'm mishearing somebody say Max.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is still going to be a really good season for him.
Yep.
I have huge hopes for him this year. It's just last night, and maybe it's the conditions, maybe it's preseason rust.
No excuses for the Canadian. No excuses for the Canadian in the conditions.
He was connecting well with his teammates, and that's really what it came down to.
Speaking of Max, next up, stock down. The Brazilian, the Wonder Kid. Give me 5 of these signs.
No,
up,
I'll take 10.
up, all of them. Give me all of the Max stock. I saw it immediately. I mean, in the first 5 minutes, he was finding space. He was looking for the ball. You could tell he wanted it. He was begging for it. He wants to create.
He wants to be the guy.
Oh, man.
And we were talking about this before we went live, that when Max entered the field in Guatemala for 10 minutes or
you could tell
he was one of the best players, if not the best player on the pitch during that game.
Yeah.
Had the best opportunity the Rapids had in that entire game.
Yep.
Only didn't score because one of the Comunicaciones defenders just was in the right place at the right time to block his shot.
I'll blame the bees in goal, actually.
Well, what's funny about that, they didn't tell us anything about that when we were in Guatemala. Like, we had no idea why the match was being delayed, like, from the stands.
Weird. Yeah.
They had no, like, I got messages from people on Twitter saying, did you guys hear about the bees?
Yeah.
Like, no idea. They didn't tell us anything. But yeah, Max had a great game both last night and in the 10 minutes he had last week.
The start was unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping, praying for Max to start.
Yeah.
But I did not think FRASER would commit to it. I was expecting him to save Max for maybe like 30, 40 minutes if the Rapids were still chasing a goal.
I was expecting that 60th minute sub
100%.
versus the 75, 80 minute sub, where I thought that was where his fitness was at. Okay, maybe he's up to 60. He played a good 60 minutes last night.
Yeah.
And it was quality minutes. And it's funny, we were all in the press box like, man, he looks really big. But that's just because Comunicaciones is small. He's, 5'9", 5'10". Yeah. He looked 6'2" out there. But so creative.
But he looks great on the
most
ball.
creative player on the field for the Rapids by a mile.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think I was hesitant going into this year. I thought that maybe his first year with the team would be a transition year because we've seen a lot with international acquisitions who come into MLS just because of the different style of the league, how there's way more running and stamina necessary to sort of keep up with the league. We've seen a lot of international acquisitions come in and sort of take a while to bed in. Like, I'm a big Galvan fan, and I know he's not going to be playing much this year. But like the first year he came in, it took him a little bit to actually get some appearances. And I figured the same would be true for Max this year. I was not expecting him to be just like as solid as he was right out of the gate. And I'm super excited that he was as good as he was last night.
It's really exciting to have him. I'm really excited to see what he can do against MLS competition. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're both way up. I think we're speaking for everyone in Rapids Nation.
Yes.
When we're saying the hype is
jump
on the hype train
stock
now.
Yeah, if you're not buying Max stock now, like you got to get in before.
I think he's the quintessential DNVR player too. All vibes out there, man. It is the vibe. It is when he's out there, you're like, okay, like you see, even when he's not on the ball, when he's looking for the ball, you're like, oh, he must see something. He sees a play ahead of time. You want him to get the ball to make something happen.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I'm going to get a kit for sure. Maybe 2. We'll see what happens.
I'm going to hold off on getting a Max kit because every Rapids kit I've got in the last like 2-3 years, the players ended up immediately departing. So I don't want to
You buy a kit and he's out in July?
I'm not going to curse Max by buying his jersey just yet. But if he's still around next year, I'll probably get his.
Okay, let's go to the man who put Alves in the starting lineup.
That's right.
Robin Fraser.
All right. I'm going to go stock up on Robin Fraser with one caveat.
Me too!
I am going to have one caveat, though. It did not look like... Okay, so first I'll get the positives out of the way.
Yeah. I mean, since you went up, let's go positives first.
Let's go positives first. I think, like, Fraser put out the best possible lineup he could.
Yep.
The team created chances. They did exactly what they were supposed to do other than finish the ball.
Yep.
Other than finish the chances. And he made 2... subs right at the end of the game, and both of those substitutes made their penalty kicks, and Acosta and Mosquita. He put them on right in the last minute of stoppage time, literally, and both had the most convincing penalties out of all the players that took spot kicks.
Yep.
My one negative is that the rest of the players who took penalties, particularly the 4 who missed theirs, did not look like they had been practicing penalty.
Yeah. No, you're right. No one looked confident.
No, and I don't want to take that, like, obviously it's the player's fault that they missed the penalty, right? But I got the impression that maybe the Rapids didn't spend as much time as they should have in training
for sure,
practicing those spot kicks. And I feel like that does fall on Fraser.
And especially with no extra time
to
create a goal, because I think that Rubio goal showed them something, that it's like time to sprint through this snow.
Yeah.
And the way that CCL is set up, that it just goes straight to penalties. And like, whatever, I didn't want to stand out there an extra half hour. So like, I'm kind of glad it went to penalties.
I just wish they would have used up, the full allotment of stoppage time. I feel like, I would have been willing to stay out there for maybe another 2 minutes.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I thought, like, and you nailed it perfectly. He put out the best lineup, I think, for the game that you would want. I mean, Max went out there. I probably would have liked to have seen Acosta before penalties, just to see, because no one was finishing. Let's get the new guy in there and see the dynamic he brings with the rest of the guys out there. Obviously we saw Max for a very long time. It just would have been nice to have seen that. What does Dev say here? Didn't look like he's been practicing any shots. Yep. Well, there you go. That's fair.
Yeah.
Shinyashiki's also been with the team.
I don't think we're doing stock up, stock down on Shinyashiki.
No.
But if we were, it would be a massive stock down for me.
To be fair, he's only been with the team for like a week, right?
That's true. He went back to Brazil.
He was in Brazil, yeah.
Presumably getting his green card. He's all of a sudden no longer an international according to the MLS website as of today. But the Rapids haven't announced anything. There's really no other reason. But yeah, I think Shinyashiki's addition into the game was unexpected because of the of the unfortunate injury that Estevez sustained in the second half.
Oh God!
And I think that did create some confusion for the Rapids. I think when Shinyashiki came on the field, like Lewis in particular, I felt didn't have any idea of where he was supposed to be.
Nope. And I think that's the work in progress for this team.
Exactly. They're still getting used to the changes that they have to make when they have to make them, how the shape changes when the substitutes come on the field, and that's just the way it goes.
I'll say this: I was so skeptical with that back five. I want more midfielders out there, but if Lucas is going to play like just a terrific winger up top, I'm okay with this. I'm okay 100%. With this back five going into LA. And the rest of the season looking for a while. It looks on paper and on just seeing it minus the conditions and the results. Yeah. I love the formation. God, man, and especially with Max. I think throwing Max into the deep end like that was the right way to go and really force his creativity to come out because we needed a goal.
I think the big thing we'll see as the year goes on is sort of what happens when Trusty goes.
Yes.
Because when Trusty goes, they'll be in a situation, and obviously they can make future reinforcements at the at center back in the summer window.
Kid is there too.
Yeah, exactly. But without someone that reliable for that left center back role, it wouldn't surprise me the least if FRASER started to shift back to a back four.
Yeah, and then you can throw Acosta, Price, Mac, and Max.
Yeah.
Together, and I think. Ideally, when you don't have Trusty there, that's probably the ideal move. And we'll see. Yeah. When you needed to make an ideal roster change, he did it. Granted, he's only had 2 chances, but I was worried that it was going to be defense, and throwing Max in like that. I like where Robin's head is at.
I really think that was the mistake down in Guatemala. I think that they could have benefited by. Like, for example, I think a guy like Barrios, should have made the start in Guatemala over Lewis. I think that might have turned the tide a little bit.
Sure. But, so speaking of that back line, that back five, let's go to them next because that as a unit, stock up, stock down on the back line.
Oh, of the center backs, absolutely stock up.
All the way. All the way. That Lawless, Wilson, Trusty line.
And to be fair, they weren't challenged too much.
Nope.
Last night.
Nope.
But I do think that those 3 players have such an incredible chemistry along the back line.
And you can almost throw Rosenberry back there with them too.
Yeah,
almost.
True. Yeah. Because, compared to Estevez, Rosenberry basically spends the whole game in the defensive third.
Yeah.
It's almost a back four with the floating wing back that goes forward on the left side. But yeah, the 3 center backs in particular looked great.
Great.
Danny Wilson had one moment where he committed a turnover, I think, right at in zone 14 that nearly caused a disaster, gave them a pretty good chance.
Yeah.
But honestly, through both legs, Comunicaciones hardly created anything from open play.
Nope.
All of their big chances came from set pieces.
Yep.
And we have the defenders to thank for that because they basically neutralized their Cremas' forwards for the entire series.
And my biggest beef with that back line after leg one was Lawless playing a little too much on the ball and a little too far up. And I think that adjustment was made. I think Robin did a really good job with that adjustment. And I think they were very sound positionally. It didn't spread out.
100%.
It was just overall pretty good. Okay, we're going to speed this up. Next one, and this is perfect leading into our guest. Last stock up, stock down, Rapids hype. Womp womp.
Yeah.
Womp womp womp. Tough, man. It was terrible conditions, so you can't really knock a light crowd. But man, to just go out with so the way that Portland game ended on Thanksgiving, to the way the first leg ended, to the way the second leg ended.
It's just been nonstop gut punch.
I was going to say nut punch.
Okay, there you go. Like, listen.
Brutal. Just brutal. And, we need hypes. We need hype. We need the vibes to get back up. And I think, going to LA is a tough way to keep that going. But
especially
I think
with the
some
short rest. And we're going to talk about this later. But,
yeah. So, with hype in mind and with vibes in mind, we're going to go into second segment here. We're going to be breaking down the new kit that debuted. And we both have some pretty positive things to say about it. But we're going to bring on design expert